You don't need to change everything. You need to change one thing. And here's the disturbing reality: neuroscientists have discovered that changing just one core habit creates what they call a keystone effect, where your entire life restructures around that single behavior without conscious effort. But most people spend their lives trying to fix 17 problems at once, which is why nothing ever changes. By the end of this video, I'll reveal the exact habit that triggers the fastest personal transformation and how to install it in 96 hours. But first, you need to understand why everything you've tried has failed. Let me show you what's happening right now. You want to change, so you make a list. Wake up earlier, work out, eat clean, read more, journal, meditate, build a business, and you try to do all of it at once, and you last 3 days, because you're asking your brain to override 17 different patterns simultaneously, and your brain doesn't work that way. It resists massive change. It craves consistency, so it shuts you down, and you think you failed because you lack discipline, but you didn't fail because of discipline, you failed because of strategy. Here's what nobody tells you about transformation: it doesn't happen through addition, it happens through subtraction. You don't become a new person by doing more things, you become a new person by doing one thing so consistently that it changes your identity, and once your identity changes, everything else follows. This is the Keystone Effect. One habit unlocks a cascade of other habits without effort, but most people never find their keystone. They keep stacking behaviors and wondering why nothing sticks. Now here's the brutal part. While you're spinning your wheels trying to change everything, time is passing. Days, weeks, months, and you're still the same person, same patterns, same results, same life, because you're attacking the symptoms instead of the root. You're trying to reorganize the surface while the foundation stays broken, and no amount of surface-level change will transform you if the core stays the same. You need to find the one habit that restructures everything else, and once you do, transformation is inevitable. Let me tell you what a keystone habit actually is. It's a behavior that creates a ripple effect across your entire life. It's the domino that knocks down all the others. For some people, it's making their bed. For others, it's a morning run. For others, it's going to bed on time. The specific habit is less important than the effect. What matters is that it's a behavior that, when executed daily, shifts your identity and makes other positive behaviors automatic. And the right keystone habit is different for everyone. But there's one that works for almost anybody. Here's the psychology behind why one habit can change everything. Your brain organizes behavior into clusters. When you execute one behavior in a cluster, it primes the others. For example, people who exercise regularly are statistically more likely to eat better, sleep better, and be more productive, not because they're disciplined in all areas, but because exercise is a keystone habit that triggers identity change. When you see yourself as someone who works out, you start making choices consistent with that identity. You're not forcing yourself to eat clean. You're just being who you are. Now here's what's actually happening in your brain. Every habit you have is tied to a neural pathway. The more you repeat the habit, the stronger the pathway. And strong pathways become automatic. You don't think about brushing your teeth. You just do it. That's automation. But here's the key: some pathways are more influential than others. When you strengthen a keystone pathway, it strengthens adjacent pathways. It's like upgrading the operating system. All the apps run better. You're not installing 17 new programs. You're fixing the core code. Here's the shift that changes everything. Stop trying to become a different person. Start with one behavior that proves you're already becoming that person. Not a massive behavior. A small one, but one that's non-negotiable. One that you do every single day no matter what. Because consistency is what rewires identity. And identity is what drives all behavior. You don't need to want to work out if you're someone who works out. You just do it, because that's who you are. And identity is built through repeated action. But here's where most people go wrong. They choose habits based on what sounds impressive. They want to meditate for an hour, write 2,000 words, run 5 miles, and they burn out in a week. But the best keystone habit is the one you can do even on your worst day. It's not about intensity, it's about inevitability. You need a habit so small that you can't fail, so simple that you can't skip, so integrated into your day that it becomes part of your identity without resistance. Let me show you the framework. A keystone habit has three qualities: it's identity shifting, it's stackable, and it's evidence generating. Identity shifting means it changes how you see yourself. Stackable means other behaviors naturally attach to it. Evidence generating means it creates proof every single day that you're becoming someone new. And the habit I'm about to reveal has all three. Here's the habit that changes everything. Wake up at the same time every single day and make your bed immediately. That's it. No snooze. Same time. Make the bed. Sounds absurdly simple, but here's what it does. First, it gives you a win before you've spoken to anyone. You've already accomplished something. Your brain releases dopamine. You feel momentum. Second, it forces discipline in the first 10 seconds of your day. You're training yourself to override comfort. Third, it creates environmental order. You walk back into your room later and it's not chaos. It's control. And control is contagious. Now here's where it gets interesting. When you execute this habit for 30 days, something shifts. You start noticing you're making other micro decisions differently. You're less likely to leave dishes in the sink, less likely to skip the workout, less likely to procrastinate, not because you're trying harder, but because you've become someone who doesn't tolerate disorder. The bed was the keystone. Everything else fell into place. But here's the neuroscience behind why this works. When you wake up at the same time and immediately take action, you're activating your prefrontal cortex before your limbic system can hijack you. Your limbic system wants comfort. It wants snooze. It wants to stay in bed. But when you override it within seconds of waking, you set the tone for the entire day. You're not negotiating with comfort. You're leading with discipline. And that leadership carries through every subsequent decision. Here's what elite performers understand. They don't rely on motivation. They rely on systems that remove the need for motivation. And the system starts with one non-negotiable habit, something they do regardless of how they feel, regardless of circumstances, regardless of results. It's the anchor. And when everything else is chaos, the anchor keeps them grounded. For most of them, that anchor is a morning ritual. And the ritual starts the second they wake up. Now let me tell you what happens when you don't have a keystone habit. You're reactive. You wake up when your body decides. You start your day responding to notifications. You let your environment dictate your behavior. And you spend the entire day in response mode, never in creation mode. You're not building, you're surviving. And surviving doesn't create transformation. It creates stagnation. And stagnation is just a slow drift toward regret. Here's the trap most people fall into. They think small habits don't matter. They want the big transformation now, so they skip the fundamentals and go straight for the advanced tactics. But transformation doesn't work that way. You can't build a second floor without a foundation. And the foundation is built one brick at a time, one habit, one day, repeated until it's automatic. And once it's automatic, it's no longer a habit. It's identity. Here's what happens when you install a keystone habit. Week 1, it feels forced. You're fighting resistance every single day, but you do it anyway. Week 2, the resistance softens. Your brain starts to expect the behavior. Week 3, it feels wrong not to do it. Week 4, it's automatic. And by week 5, you're not someone trying to build habits. You're someone who has habits. And that shift is everything. Now here's the secret method I promised you. It's called habit stacking. Once your keystone habit is automatic, you attach a second habit to it. You don't add the second habit to your day. You add it to the first habit. For example, after you make your bed, you do 10 push-ups. That's it. The bed triggers the push-ups. You're not creating a new decision point. You're extending an existing pattern. And after 30 days, the push-ups become automatic too. Then you add a third, then a fourth. You're not building 17 habits. You're building a chain. And the chain starts with one link. Here's the psychology. Your brain loves sequences. When you link behaviors together, they become one unified routine. And routines require less willpower than isolated actions. This is why morning routines are so powerful. You're not making 17 decisions. You're executing one sequence. And the sequence is triggered by the first behavior. So if you nail the first behavior, the rest follows. But if you skip the first, the entire chain collapses. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. You wake up at 6 a.m. You make your bed immediately. That's habit 1. After making the bed, you drink 16 ounces of water. That's habit 2, stacked on 1. After water, you do a 2-minute breathing exercise. Habit 3, stacked on 2. After breathing, you write 1 sentence in a journal. Habit 4, stacked on 3. You're not doing 4 separate habits. You're doing 1 sequence. And the sequence takes 8 minutes. But the identity shift is massive. Here's what people miss. They think the habit is the goal. But the habit is not the goal. The identity is the goal. You're not making your bed because clean beds matter. You're making your bed because you're becoming someone who doesn't tolerate chaos. You're not drinking water because hydration matters. You're drinking water because you're becoming someone who prioritizes their body. Every action is a vote for a type of person. And when you stack enough votes, you become that person. Now here's the part that separates people who transform from people who stay stuck. Consistency. 1 good day doesn't change you. 100 consecutive good days do. Because transformation is not an event. It's a process. And the process is built on repetition. Your brain doesn't rewire from intensity. It rewires from consistency. So you don't need to do the habit perfectly. You just need to do it daily. Because daily repetition is what builds the pathway. And the pathway is what creates automation. And automation is what makes change effortless. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. You're 1 habit away from a completely different life. Not 17 habits. 1. But you have to choose the right one. And you have to execute it every single day for long enough that it stops being something you do and starts being who you are. And when that shift happens, everything else changes without effort. Not because you're trying harder, but because you've become someone different. And different people get different results. Let me tell you what you're losing by not doing this. Every day you delay, you're reinforcing the old identity. The person who hits snooze. The person who tolerates disorder. The person who waits for motivation. And that person is not going to build the life you want. That person is going to stay exactly where they are. And 5 years from now, you'll look back and realize nothing changed. Not because you couldn't, but because you didn't choose the one habit that would have changed everything. Here's the final shift you need to make. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop waiting to feel motivated. Stop waiting for clarity. Just choose the habit. Set the alarm for the same time every day. And when it goes off, get up and make your bed. No negotiation. No snooze. Just execute. And do it again tomorrow. And the day after. And the day after. Until it's not a habit. Until it's just who you are. Because here's the truth. 1 habit changes you. Not because the habit is magic, but because the habit changes your identity. And identity determines behavior. And behavior determines results. So if you want different results, you don't need a different strategy. You need a different identity. And identity is built 1 habit at a time, starting with the one you choose today. So here's what you're going to do tonight. You're going to set your alarm for the exact same time tomorrow. And when it goes off, you're going to get up. No snooze. And you're going to make your bed. And you're going to do it the next day. And the next. Until you don't recognize the person you used to be. Until the old version feels like a stranger. Until you've become someone who doesn't need motivation because discipline is just who you are. 1 habit. 1 identity. 1 life. It all starts tomorrow morning. What time is your alarm set for?